My name is Jillian Moore, and this is my show Mirabilia. This is the culminating solo show of my Iowa Artist Fellowship for 2024 to 2025. And all of the work here is sculptural, which is a little bit of a departure for me because I normally make contemporary jewelry. Some of the earlier sculptural pieces that are included in this were, well, some predate my fellowship, a small handful. And they are maybe more influenced by my jewelry work and a little more handwork, more time went into them. When I started this body of work, the most recent pieces, I was trying to work more quickly and more improvisationally because I only had 1 year in my fellowship. Some of my instincts as a jewelry maker don't really work on the larger scale sculptural pieces. So I was trying to work as quickly on as many pieces as I could to learn new techniques, learn what would happen when I scaled up, and learn about new surface treatments that I couldn't have used in my previous work. All of these pieces were made using aqua resin, which is a composite resin that I have worked with a lot in my career, but I have never spent as much time just making sculptures. I typically work with a really glossy, clear resin. I like it for my jewelry work because it protects them from wear and tear. Like on a ring, I like how durable it makes it. But on these bigger pieces, they're not wearable, and I didn't have to solve for that. So I got to play with the aqua resin as an art material, not as a jewelry material. I could use paints and finishes and add details that were too fragile, maybe for jewelry, but still very durable for a wall sculpture. There is a real tradition of artists incorporating things that they find, incorporating things that other people think are junk. I mean, there's plenty of examples of that in art history already. Like especially the abstract expressionists were pulling in different things, and we don't talk about that work like it's upcycling, right? So I work with a lot of new materials, which really just means I work with things that are industrial if I want to, if they're interesting. The aqua resin is an industrial resin, but I work with a lot of foams, like insulating foams. Spray foam is a texture you will see in some of these pieces. And I like finding insulating foam and reusing it. So I reuse materials that I would normally buy new, and I just know that I'll get lucky enough to find them used, like construction materials. But I also will glean secondhand craft materials whenever I'm at thrift shops or estate sales, anything where there's sort of used goods. There are art supplies and craft supplies. So all of these pieces also have plastics and things that other people might view as trash that I've incorporated. When I was making the new work for the fellowship last summer, the first thing I did was go too big. And I immediately hurt my back. And I had Iowa artist Mary Zarin come give me a little pep talk in my studio. And she was like, why are you doing these the biggest, hardest way first if you're trying to learn a new thing? And her advice was to work in a scale that I could hold in my lap, and also to work much more quickly so that I could get through those ideas. And this piece in particular, I started like the day after Mary left with the goal that I was going to see how quickly I could make it. And it is made with a scrap of foam that I did not carve, a scrap of fabric that I dunked in aqua resin, and the balls are these foam balls from a thrift store. The additional components are something I had in my studio. I have parts everywhere. So instead of making a piece start to finish where I sketched it and planned it, like a lot of these, it's the kind of piece where I just did seat of the pants. And I just every day responded to what I had done the day before and hoped that by the end I would have something that I was happy with, which was really liberating. And it kind of got me over this hump, and it gave my back a break. And then I was able to produce, I don't know, like started 24 smaller pieces because of it. This red box, I actually made this in 2020. I had a sculpture show in April of 2020 here at Gilded Pear. Unfortunately, it was in April of 2020, and not a lot of people were able to see it. But at that time, I thought, oh, I'm going to do this sculpture thing. And I started a bunch of pieces. And then I moved to a place where I had a bigger studio, but it became really difficult to do much with the sculpture work for a while. I defaulted to jewelry, and I put it in storage and almost forgot about it until I started my fellowship. And I remembered that I had a few unfinished sculptural pieces that I could sink my teeth into first. And I really liked this form, and I had no idea what to do with it. And so the first thing I did, the first piece I finished, was just laying this out and trying out different surface finishes on the material and coming up with this particular application over spray foam of aqua resin, pigment, and paste wax. And cracking the code on this finish, this red finish on this box, is what helped me feel like, okay, now I know what I'm gonna do on these big pieces for their surface, that I don't have to rely on the clear resin, which was gonna be a real hindrance to working at a larger scale for me. And then the parts that ended up in it were all things that I had made for other pieces, and I thought they looked nice together, and it became that early improvisational sort of permission slip that I needed. Right? So like when we break our own rules, there's that fear that the piece will fail, that it won't be usable or it won't be interesting. But you kind of have to risk the piece failing to get to somewhere new and interesting. And so that is the tension in making something new or challenging yourself, is like, oh, I'm out of my comfort zone and this could be a dud, or it could be really good. And I don't always know. I have 2 degrees in jewelry making and metalsmithing, and I never thought that I would make things that could plausibly be called paintings. I minored in sculpture, but I was always so enamored with the process of craft, with the idea of a tangible object. I had bought into the idea that somehow making a painting wasn't enough when I was younger. I felt like I had to go farther in the pieces I made. And so making jewelry seemed to satisfy that for a while. But I've entered a phase in my career where I'm much more comfortable saying I'm an artist as opposed to saying I'm a maker or I'm a jewelry maker. Saying that I'm an artist and just holding on to that as a larger identity gave me room to say, well, maybe I'm going to make a sculpture. Maybe that sculpture goes on the wall. And what happens if that sculpture gets flattened out enough that it's kind of more like a wriggly painting? We scale things according to our body. So if an object looks like it should be smaller and it happens to be bigger, it feels like, well, that's a big version of that, or that's a small version of that, as I assume it is relating to my body. So making a piece this size is the closest I've come so far to making an environment out of my aesthetic, as opposed to making an object or creature or thing that has left its environment and you find it and it's like, well, where does this belong? I don't think it's part of this world. I go to Munich Jewelry Week once a year and sell jewelry there, but the biggest audience that my work is connected with is a Dutch audience, and I lucked into that. But I have found that the Dutch collecting group that I've met are big fans of color. They're big fans of challenging colors and are on board with my mission of forms that are funny or even a little silly. There is some sort of cultural affinity that I have found for myself with Dutch people, that we have kind of the same sensibility around humor. That idea of color and humor being so enthusiastically supported makes me feel a little more emboldened to try it in my work, rather than shift what I'm doing maybe for the audience that's immediately in front of me physically. Yeah, believe it or not, I'm a rural artist, and I live in Cedar County, Iowa, on about 4 acres of what looks like a Grant Wood painting. And I spend a lot of time looking at the landscape and being in the landscape. It doesn't mean that I am a landscape painter, but being in that type of space influences me on a deeper level. It makes me feel more connected to nature and the things that excite me. I'm cherry picking my own colors and I'm dialing up the knob of what nature might provide a bit. But I do also lift things from different environments that I visit. I would say this work could be mistaken for being very urban because of the color usage, but that's just my relationship to color. Secretly, the mission is to get everybody to fall in love with colorful weirdos so that I'm safe in the world. All of the things that I make come from my love of the natural world, but very specifically my love of how bizarre it is, how we really can't predict a lot of things, and how humans think that there are very firm answers and that we have a very tight control over the natural world, and that is delusional, in my opinion. And I'm very interested in the ways that things grow, change, decay, come together, the way that organisms and things in nature respond to our interventions or to one another. And all the pieces I make come out of looking at constant imagery from biology, from cell biology specifically, mycology. I'm interested in disease structures. I'm interested in organs and fruit and the convergence of things that are both yummy and beautiful and terrifying and maybe malignant. And I would love to have those things combined in an object because I really want people to reckon with a balance of desire and discomfort and hopefully reconcile that the object is interesting and they should make time for it rather than reject it. Oh, baby. Some of this.